Check. Good. So I'm Max Ceron. Max Ceron, CWB Association Welding Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding Podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and as always, I'm going up, down, left, right, and inside out looking for the guests around this world to bring on to this wonderful show. Today I have from Southern Ontario here, Justin Smith. He's coming to us direct from his work at Ontario Shipyards. Justin, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Yourself?
Good. So we were just talking before the show started, and you are a welding supervisor at Ontario Shipyards. Is that correct?
Yes.
How do you like that job?
I love it. It's great.
Yeah, it keeps you busy.
Oh, on my toes all the time.
So first of all, I think we need to clarify a couple things for people that are listening, because Ontario Shipyards has recently had a kind of a branding name change, right? I've known it for the last while, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Heddle Shipyards, correct, before?
Yeah, it was Heddle Marine Service when I started, and then about 2019, we changed to Heddle Shipyards.
And now Ontario.
Now Ontario, yeah.
Is there a reason for that change? I'm just curious.
I think it was just to more or less brand everything as one, just with the three shipyards across the province, just to kind of integrate it more formally as one yard, right?
Yeah. I feel like shipbuilding, ship construction, ship maintenance has been kind of off the radar for most of the welding community. Even though we have massive shipyards in Ontario, Quebec, East Coast, West Coast, that work with countries around the world on boats of all different kinds and ships of all different kinds, it wasn't really something that was talked about. You don't see a lot of material about welding on ships. You don't see a lot of advertising of the ship construction industry. How did you find it?
Oh, actually I was at a bar one night and I was laid off from where I worked before, and some guy was talking about it, and I'd never even heard about this place down at the end of Hilliard here, right? And I drove down here the next day and handed in a resume, and the rest is pretty much history.
Well, and see, that's so interesting, because that's kind of how most people I know got into shipping or shipyards. But I've been to all the shipyards in Canada, or most of them. There's no small ones. They're all big. Like, they're all at least a few hundred people, and you get out to like the C-Spans and the Irvings, and you're talking about, in the thousands of people. And how is this so under the radar? Why do you think it's kind of not that common? Because I know they're all dying for welders right now.
Yeah, I started back here in 2017. It was Heddle Marine Service at the time, and it was fairly small. They had just got their hands on the Port Welder Yard, and I don't think Thunder Bay was in the equation yet. So I would say I started April, and it was peaking because you have your on and off seasons, right? Okay. And then through the summer months, I was fortunate enough to stay on full time and not have to deal with a layoff. And I would say at most there was 20 to 25 of us between all trades in the yard at any time. And then obviously we would ramp up for winter work, right? So as we grew and they got Port Welder, the workforce obviously grew, right? And then we began to get support from the government and whatnot, which has really got it out there now that Ontario Shipyards really is a player in the game now, right?
Yeah. So for yourself, you said you had a job before and you got laid off and you kind of stumbled into shipyard work. Where did you get into the trade? Where are you from? Like, where's your hometown? And, how did you find welding?
I'm from Vineland, Ontario, which is a small kind of a grape town, vineyards and whatnot. It's just between Grimsby and St. Catharines. And where I went to high school, the BDSS, Beamsville District Secondary School, and we had fairly big tech. Like, we had dedicated welding, dedicated auto, dedicated carpentry, yada, yada. And I struggled a bit through through school. Growing up, I was always hands-on, like in the garage and whatnot, working on tractors, working on cars, body work, this and that. So I was never really one for sitting in front of a teacher. But I was very fortunate because you couldn't really start taking welding until grade 10. I was very fortunate in grade 9 to have been kind of pulled into the welding by the welding teacher. And from there, I had welding anywhere from 2 to 4 periods, like 2 periods a semester from grade 9 right through till the time I left high school. So,
and when you came home to your parents and were like, "Hey, I'm really digging this welding thing," like at least you have something to do at school now that kind of has something to look forward to, as opposed to dreading going to school because you're just bored for 8 hours. How did your parents feel about you finding this career?
I think I grew up with my grandparents primarily, so I think they were kind of happy. It's kind of funny because originally I wanted to be an auto mechanic, so I had done a few co-ops as that, and then as I progressed more and more with the welding and kind of realized like, hey, this is something I'm actually like kind of good at. I enjoy this. I kind of switched paths, right?
Yeah,
and then
you graduate high school, then then what?
Yeah, in 2014, 2013, 2014, I came to Heddle from National Steel Car. I applied there on my 17th, just before my 18th birthday. I applied at National Steel Car. They had a big job fair, and I got a phone call 3-4 days after my 18th birthday, and that was it. I chose to drop out and go start working. I just felt like it was the right thing for me to do, and it's got me this far right now. So since then, I've done my mature credits and whatnot, got my grade 12, but back at the time, it was the path I chose to take.
And with that job going into it as such a young person, you're going to be one of the youngest people on the floor. How did the industry accept you? Like, did you find that the learning curve was fine? Were you able to just slide right into it, or was it tough?
Skill set wise, I was okay because I had already about 4 years under my belt with welding and stuff like that in theory. It was more or less just being obviously 18 years old and walking into this environment that's like, wow, this is breathtaking, right? It was a lot of adjusting, working with people, double my age, triple my age, and they don't care. No, they don't care how young you are, how old you are. You're working next to them. You're just the same as they are, right? So learning how to kind of toughen up and deal with stuff and take stuff as it came, I think really, really helped shape me into who I am today, right?
Did you have any like negative experiences where people were like, kid, you're too young, you're gonna get hurt, or like you could get around some pretty grumpy people, or did you have someone that was sort of a mentor in that first job that kind of said, hey man, I'll take you under my wing a bit and show you the ropes?
Yeah. My first job, like steel car, it was cutthroat. There was nobody, I don't think there's anybody that really stands out in my head that kind of helped me. It was more fend for yourself, right? But as I came here, this place has just been a whole different story as far as mentorship goes and the abilities and opportunities I've had.
So you came in as basically, maybe a year and a bit of work practice under your belt, and then you come into Heddle, and you tell me about the opportunities. So what did you see when you first walked into a shipyard? In terms of from the eyes of a welder, you're looking around. What do you think's going on? Because they can be pretty chaotic shipyards.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say back then. I was 21, just turned 21 when I started here. It was chaos. It was a completely different change of pace and a completely different environment, right? I went from welding new to new, everything jigged up, to you're fitting it up or somebody else is fitting it up, and it's rusty to new, new to new, rusty to rusty. Like it was just a completely different environment, right?
Yeah. How was it on your skills?
With the flux core side of things, I was all right. I hadn't had much experience with stick under my belt yet, so that was a huge learning curve. That was a lot of late nights staying on my own time and burning rods until I got to it. But again, I think back to one time I was on a night shift here, and there was a couple older gentlemen on night shift, and I was struggling with stick, and the one guy just took me, and I think for about 2 or 3 hours, I just watched him burn rods, and as he was welding, he was yelling out tips and pointers, and from there, it was like the snap of a finger. I just really, really started to pick up on it.
Mm-hmm. So, as you started welding, there's a couple things that happen to all young welders. I was a welder myself. So first of all, you hone your skills, you start getting better and better as a welder. But then that part that you hated when you were younger, school, starts to creep back. And it always starts to creep back in any trade, because to get to the next levels, to get to the next certs, that you need to kind of up your own game, it always takes going back to a desk for a bit or back to a course for a bit. Now, luckily in the welding trades, it's not too long ever of a hit. But, for yourself, how long were you kind of in the welding scene before you're like, you know what, I think I'm going to have to go back and brush up on some of these other skills that I need?
I would say about 5 years. I
Yeah.
was about pretty heavy on the tools here for about 5 years until that part of it kind of clicked in, that like, hey, there were some events that had occurred along the way that I probably shouldn't get too into detail about, but really when we saw the swing to Annex M really starting to take full effect,
Yeah.
was like, wow, there's a lot more to this than just welding, right? Like, you starting to learn about it and see about it, was like, this might be an opportunity to grab onto something here and run with it, right?
Yeah. So for most people that are listening, and especially if you're outside of Canada, there's a few different registries or standards around the world used for shipbuilding. For the longest time, CSA was kind of on the periphery of shipyard building, just as a welding standard and code, but not specific to marine. When the Marine Annex came in, it was basically a way of creating a set of standards that was specific to the marine industry and things that have been done for a long time. It's not like they reinvented the wheel, but now there was a code that was meant to be stuck to. And it meant right from procedure development to material handling to the weldments and the testing and the NDE after. Lloyd's is another registry. A lot of people sometimes wonder what other registries out there. Lloyd's is a huge registry for shipbuilding as well. ISO's in there. It depends where you are in the world and what you're doing, but if you think about it, it makes sense. Like, you're building these massive ships, these massive things that got to live out in the water. And people think of water as like a soft, floaty thing. Not when you're hundreds of tons. Mm-hmm. Water is like cement at that size. So, like, you gotta build these things to withstand not only the environment, but the jobs that they need to do and keep the people on board safe, right?
Yeah, it's like I think you hit the nail on the head there, especially with the procedure development, because you essentially saw, as far as being able to use any kind of pre-qualified procedures or anything like that, was totally done away with, right? So you were talking any process, any kind of different grades of material. You're talking about running a PQR for essentially anything that you need to do, right?
Yeah. So for yourself, tell me how it worked out. You told me you didn't like sitting in a desk and you didn't like school, but now you're older, right? You're coming up 24, 25. You've been welding for 5 years, working on your hand skills, which I think is awesome. At this point in your journey, had you considered getting your apprenticeship done or going for your Red Seal at all?
Yeah, maybe down the road. I think I'm still at a point in my career where I'm not fully sure where I see myself next.
Yeah.
A lot's happened at a fast pace in the last couple of years, where I think now that, as in the yard that I'm in specifically, things are starting to slow down. Right now I just want to kind of maybe take a year to kind of breathe and like take in like how much I've progressed in the last couple of years, right? Because it's not easy at a young age, right? You're taking a lot really quick, right?
Yeah, it is, and it's hard on the brain.
Start thinking about, where do I want to go next, and this and that, and then you get caught. But it's like, maybe I just need to kind of take some time and enjoy the moment for what it is, right?
Yeah. Well, and I seen in your bio here that you had taken your welding supervisor course. That that's a great course. First of all, for anyone who's never taken kind of any welding schooling, like let's just say you were just got on the tools young and you just started welding. I mean, that's what I did. That not everyone goes to school to weld. Some of us just go weld. Um, but at some point you wanna start learning more. The welding supervisor course is a great entry course for that. How did you enjoy it? What was it like for you to get back in the classroom? Like, were you scared? You're like, oh man, I'm gonna have to go sit in the classroom again. Did you take it online? What was it like for you?
So I did mine online.
Yeah.
Just we were too busy here for me to be able to leave. I loved it. I learned so much. I would highly recommend it to if it's anybody's first time hearing about it, or you know about it, or you've been thinking about doing it, whether you have the opportunity for your employer to pay for it or you just pay for it yourself. I think what you come out with after is invaluable. You learn so much through the course.
What
And
kind of stuff? What kind of stuff did you learn that you like for yourself? You had been working for a while, so you know stuff because you're doing it, right?
yeah.
What was it that really like in the course you're like, oh, like some kind of light bulbs went off?
I would say roles and responsibilities as a supervisor. I
Yeah.
didn't because when I got the opportunity to be a lead hand, that's one thing. You don't think about anything other than, yeah, I'm still on tools, but now I get to lead people, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I actually got put in the supervisor position, it was kind of the same thing. I was grasping the concept of being responsible for manpower and getting jobs done, but I didn't really know what responsibility actually came with the role as far as safe handling of consumables, rods not being left out, people's machines set within their parameters,
Mm-hmm.
ID numbers written on everything they weld. It was all stuff like that, right? Where
Yeah.
without the course, you don't learn that stuff, right?
Well, and then you can really get yourself in trouble if something goes wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what it all comes down to is safety and what's the word I'm looking for? Accountability,
Accountability, yes.
right? Because when things go sideways in the shop, we're all a team. We all, we're a brotherhood and a sisterhood in the shop trying to get work done. We look out for each other. But insurance companies don't care. Like companies outside of you are looking to blame. So you got to have your eggs in a basket all lined up nice and clean so that if something does happen somewhere down the line, you can protect yourself and your crew, right? You want to protect your crew from going through some because 99% of the time the issue it wasn't necessarily even yours. It was just something that got missed and handed down the line. And so you got to start looking at which hands were on the project, right?
Exactly. And a lot of it too in a shop, you might get you get your CWB audits where your rep comes through and audits the shop. Well,
Mm-hmm.
not only here we have that, but we also have with the Coast Guard work, you got like Coast Guard coming through and auditing. Then you got ABS or Lloyd's, whoever the surveyor is coming through and auditing. So there's always eyes on everything going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't take much to drop the ball if you're not paying attention, right? Because not not everybody out there understands to the full extent of like what you as an individual might have to deal with, right? They don't see it firsthand, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how many people are working in your crew right now? Like, how many people do you supervise?
Right now, I got 26 people under me.
And does that ebb and flow? Does it go up and down? I mean, the nature of the shipyards that some people struggle with is that they are seasonal in a lot of aspects, right?
Yeah, so when I started, I had 7 people. When we were at our peak through the project we're on right now, there was 36 people. And I think we leveled out right now at around 26 people that hopefully
Can
would go
stay.
good.
Yeah.
And everybody's full time, right?
Yeah.
A lot of and it, we might get into it in a little bit, but finding people. Let me think about how I want to word this. You don't just get people that come in that can do it. Everybody
Right.
thinks they can come in here and do it, and then they get into the ship or into a environment, and it's a reality check in
It is.
entirety for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of time invested in people, building them up to the point where they're at. Not just myself. I got other coworkers who have been here longer than me, and again, we all support each other, and
Yeah.
we uplift people, and we bring them up to the best of their abilities, right? Because I always say, when you start here, it's easy to go from here to here, but to get from here to here, that's really the hardest part, right?
It's that top 10%. You know, they always say it's always that top 10% that's really hard to hit. And when people are looking for, like, as an employer, you're trying to hire, you're hiring for that top 10%. The bottom 90 everyone has, but you're looking for that top 10, and that's, I mean, it's hard at this point in the world, with the lack of kids that went into the trades for 30 years and now are behind the ball. There's going to be a lot of training on site now going forward. I think that's just a fact. There's no shipbuilding school that's going to give you your perfect students. That doesn't exist. You know, we have to kind of just accept the reality that almost every person that comes into the shop, you're going to have to spend a significant amount of time training them to do the things that your company specifically does, right?
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of where my headset went, I would say, about a year ago. Was I was so, and I still do, but I was so focused on finding that perfect resume,
the unicorn, yeah,
right? But I don't want to say it wasn't working out too well, but it wasn't going well. So I kind of shifted, and I started hiring based on personalities, because I kind of realized, hey, like, we can teach this stuff, you know what I mean? We can get these people to where we want to get them, but they got to want it, right?
That's right.
So I found hiring green with really good personality and eager was almost better than hiring somebody with 10, 15 years experience outside of shipbuilding, who already comes in thinking that they might know everything and aren't open to learning, right? Biggest thing I've struggled with in my career is not so much the people here now, because we all respect each other, is bringing people from the outside in, and kind of not really being taken too serious with the age I'm at. I'm only 28 years old, right? So hiring somebody in their, late 30s, early 40s, and it just not understanding that just because I'm young doesn't mean I don't have the experience that you have, right?
Yeah, and you earned your job. It wasn't handed to you, so
no,
it is what it is, right?
Yeah, there was nothing given out for sure. Everything was definitely worked for and earned.
Yeah, and I for myself, when I was young, I cut my teeth in a steel mill, and it was an environment similar to what you're saying, and it at the time, I remember when I first started getting sent out there on shutdowns, it was like, I mean, grease and fire, and it's like plus 80, and you're in tanks, and it was like I told everyone, it's like the video game Doom. Like, you play the video game Doom. That was my work. That was where I would go to work every day, is this dungeon of, and people die there every year, and it's an unsafe environment and all these things. And it's, but I stuck it out, right? And I've seen a lot of people come and go, young welders just like me, get jobs because the steel mill is like one of the highest paying jobs around here. And so it's like, yeah, right on. I can go out there for $50 an hour when you're 18. That's amazing. They'd last a week, and then they'd be like, I'm never coming back, or it's too scary, or it's gross, or it sucks, or the shifts are terrible, because those type of jobs, there is no set shifts. You start at 7 a.m. You might be leaving 2 days later. You don't know. Like, it is what it is. But the crew that did stick around, myself and the other people that we did stick around, we all learned so much from that type of environment, and the skills we picked up were so useful for the rest of our careers. Because in that crew, we've all stayed friends. 30 years later, we're all doing really well in the fields, and we always talk, when we get together, we talk about those jobs where you get to that 10%, right? We stuck out the steel mill. Everyone picked up the 80% and ran. Maybe they got to 90% and ran. But we stuck it out and got that final 10% of experience. And after that, we're fearless. They say, you want to go out to the mine? No problem. You want to go out to this? No problem. Because we did our time in a really difficult environment, and now we're confident. And we have and almost everything seems easy after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. it always comes naturally, right? Once you hit that point, it's like, oh, I know what I got to do here, right? Like,
yeah, and you're not afraid, and you can start like already. You look at a job, and you're already in your head making a tool list, being like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to grab a couple clamps. I'm gonna have to these. Oh, I'm gonna have to gouge that. I'm gonna have to grab. Oh, where's the machine? Okay, well, I'm gonna need a machine. Okay, oh, I'm gonna need at least this. Oh, I don't know if we can do that. Is that stainless? Ah, dang it, we're gonna need a plasma. Like you start doing those things in your head automatically, and that doesn't have anything to do with age, man. Like you said, some people in their 50s have been in the trade for 40 years, 30 years. They don't got that. They may never
no,
have that. They
and
may
a
never
lot of
have
guys
that.
don't want it either, right?
That's right. That's right.
They don't think, a lot of people don't really understand the added, like for me, another big learning was, man, going home physically tired from work is a lot different than going home mentally tired from work, because your brain never shuts off. Sometimes you're driving home from work, like you said, what do I need for the next day? Like, you're always planning, right?
Yeah, that is so true. I struggle with that today. I was just watching a video this morning because I'm always trying to learn stuff, and I was watching some YouTube videos on time management this morning as I was having my coffee. And the lady doing the it was on TikTok. The lady doing the TikTok thing on time management. She's like, I'm going to talk about my schedule this week, and this is my schedule. And then she's like talking about the things she does throughout the day. And then I came and looked at my schedule this morning right before we got on this call, and I was like, I'm doing this wrong. Because I got like 600 things today. Like, I don't know what the I'm doing. Like, how do you handle time management? Because that's tough, man.
I try to prioritize the quickest tasks first, and then kind of pick my way through that throughout the day.
Yeah.
And, delegate as well. I got lead hands and stuff like that, and people who want responsibilities. So, if there's something I don't really need to directly be involved with, I can just task individuals with it and check up at the end of the day or halfway through the day, and kind of roll things that way. It seems to work, right?
Well, that's really smart, because that's something that a lot of people really struggle with doing. Something that you said so easily, delegate. The delegate means trust, right? And a lot of people struggle with trusting others into their job. Did you always kind of have that trusting framework? Did you learn that along the way? Where did you get kind of that leadership style?
I was I've been doing a lot of one-on-one professional development that the company's provided for, I would say, about 2 years now. And then we have like mentorship groups and whatnot, once every 2 weeks.
Awesome.
So a lot of people definitely weren't open to it, but I was always open-armed to it. I feel like that's definitely been the biggest advancement in my career, was definitely having the opportunity to be a part of something like that, being able to talk and where I see myself next and stuff like that. And not only learning, delegation skills and stuff like that, but just understanding people's personalities and how to manage people, and realizing that everybody doesn't have the same management style. You need to be open to treating and talking to others the same, while at the end of the day still getting your point across and getting what you want out of them, right?
Yeah. Well, that's very
That
wise.
I learned really quick, because I would say at the beginning I was maybe categorized everyone, right? And then kind of realized that wasn't really getting me anywhere really quick. More with the new hires, because with the people that were already here, we had already kind of had like respect and trust for each other. So that was the last year and a half was definitely adapting my leadership style and evolving it was a huge part in where I'm at right now.
Well, that's awesome. And we're going to get more into that, but this is a great time for a break. So we're going to take a quick break here from Justin, here from Ontario Shipyards, and we'll be right back here on the CWB Association podcast after these words from our sponsors. Don't go anywhere.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we are back here on the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, as always, with you from the CWB Association. And here we have Justin Smith coming to us from Ontario Shipyards. So we were talking about before the break leadership styles, and I give training on leadership styles. It's one of the things that I was professionally trained on a while ago, and I really got into it because I had there's stories I always tell, but I had a lot of bad bosses, and when you have a few bad bosses, you definitely remember what a bad leadership style is like, right? You definitely see how bad leadership can affect your daily life. I remember driving to work as a 24, 25-year-old welder, going up to the shop, and I had 2 babies at home and all the pressure of the world on me to provide, and I'd have to pull over because I'd be crying. I hated my job. I hated my life. Everything was terrible. And it wasn't welding that I hated. It was actually my boss. And that's what it came down to, is what a huge experience that put on me to be like, if I ever get the opportunity to be a boss or to start leading people or to start running companies, I got to keep that in check, because we all have it in us to be mean. We all have it in us to be short. We all have it in us to lose our temper. These are natural. We're humans, right? Things happen. And plus, we get pressured as supervisors from our bosses to get stuff done and to be on the ball. So, it's a long process on the leadership side. When I was welding, I got to that 10%, I'd say within 10 years. I was probably about as good a welder as I was ever going to get. I'd worked a lot of different industries. I did a lot of cool things, and I was pretty comfortable with whatever situation you dropped me in. But when I went to leadership, I was in my 7th year welding when I started my first company, and I started getting into leading. I realized that train is way longer, and you can be a leader. That's okay. But to get to that 10% leader where you're like a good leader and you know what's up and you're confident, you know what to say, that takes a while.
Definitely. It's still something I'm learning every day.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm coming up on 50 and I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm still learning stuff all the time. Like I said, I'm still watching YouTube videos in the morning being like, what can I do better? And I think that's a part about being a good leader, is that you realize that you got to keep learning, right?
Yeah, you got to change with the times as well, too, right? Like leadership style these days, as opposed to, even 5 to 10 years ago, is completely different, right? You're dealing with entirely different generation, right? So,
do you feel like you're more, or you must have an advantage? Like if it was you versus me, 49 years old, Gen X, and they tell me go lead a bunch of 22-year-olds, and then we have you're a millennial, 28 years old. Or are you a late millennial or an early?
I would be the last year. 96 was the cutoff. I'm a 96, so
yeah. So you're just on. You're a baby millennial. Do you feel like you would interact and lead better? Would you be in a better trust position with youth than me? You don't know how I lead, but just arbitrarily.
I definitely think there's an advantage, just because I may be able to relate a little bit better. I think for myself, one of an advantage that I believe I have is I was raised by my grandparents, right? So a big part of me definitely really does have that very old school mentality, old school drive. But then I also have the side where I can, like I said, I can relate with people my generation, people younger than me, right? Whereas, which did take a lot to fall back on what I said when I figured out that I had to start changing my leadership style, was because at the beginning I was very like how you were probably led and how I was led to begin with, right? And I kind of realized that wasn't getting me far with some of these new people.
Yeah, just shut up and do it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to hear any excuses. Just get it done, right? But it doesn't work like that anymore, right?
Well, and it didn't really work that well before. We just did it. But you look at the track record, shops are more efficient now. They get more work done now. The systems that were put in place over the last 20 years for safety, for productivity, they work. They work.
It does work.
Right? People can dig in their heels all they want. And this is what I'd say to old guys that were being stubborn. It's like, when they put seatbelts in cars, you complain, but at the end of the day, we know that they work, right? So it's on you. It's on you to be either get on the train or get off, right?
Mm-hmm. And people like to be heard too, right?
Yeah.
I think that goes a long way. When you just let people know how they're doing, or like positive feedback, also sometimes negative feedback, but regardless, like never take credit for anybody else's work, and make sure that they know, even if it's every day, you're just telling everybody how good they're doing and stuff like that. It definitely goes a long way with people.
Now, what about the seasonal nature of your industry? A lot of welding across the country is seasonal because we're Canada. We have winters, we have summers. They make for different industry turnarounds. Saskatchewan, our busy time is the spring, straight up. Like, as soon as that snow defrosts, everything ramps up to 1,000,000%. The shipyards have their own seasons that they run on based off, I assume, also weather and high times. How does that affect your work? Is there times of the year where you're twiddling thumbs, and then there times of the years where your hair's on fire, or is it pretty steady all year round?
The last couple of years have been pretty steady. We've been fortunate to have ended up with a few VLEs, vessel life extensions.
Mm-hmm.
So for the last 2 years in the Hamilton yard, we've been pretty steady as far as keeping people on and work year round. And as we're coming to an end on this, Port Weller has a VLE for the Terry Fox in St. Catharines. So with both yards kind of being within like a half an hour drive from each other, if we start to slow down here, there's the opportunity to go there, vice versa. We do fabrication work in the shop here for them. So I think you've kind of seen the tides change a little bit within Ontario Shipyards for being able to not have to worry about seasonal work and the work just being there.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started, it was definitely, you were busy from about December till April or May. And then it was like a lull. Like, what do we, every day was wondering what you were going to do the next day.
Yeah. In Saskatchewan, that lull's usually around September, October, right before Christmas. And it's the worst because we always got our layoffs like right before Christmas. That's the worst time to lay someone off. Like, come on, wait till after Christmas.
Yeah, it was.
But it's like a Saskatchewan thing. It's like, oh, I got laid off on December the 20th. Yippee, Now, with the growth of Ontario Shipyards, I remember meeting Sean Padulo. I don't know if he's still there as boss, but he was a couple years ago. And Heddle at the time was just starting to kind of like ramp up. They had just gotten one of the new shipyards. They were just starting to kind of grow big. And I remember him talking to me about like, where are we going to find welders and tradespeople to fill these jobs? How has that struggle been for you as a supervisor on the floor to make sure that you have, like we talked about, trying to find that perfect resume? You're not gonna, if you do, pay them all the money you got, grab them. Yeah. But they're 1 in 100. If you, as a supervisor now, concerned about the product that's got to go out the door, how's hiring for you now? How tough is it?
It's definitely still hard. We had a couple good programs with Mohawk College here, where that we had 2 or 3 rounds of it, 12 people per round. And of course, not everybody made it, but I would say out of the 34 to 35 people in the end total that toughed it out, we ended up with about 6 to 7 really, really good tradespeople out of it, whether it be an electrician, a millwright, or a welder. And then, like I said, just putting skill aside and hiring based on personality and pairing them up with the right person and letting them see that they really do have a future in the industry and that you can make a good living doing this, and hopefully they choose to tough it out and ride it out and hang around, right? Because I think that's one thing I always have to understand is you can make somebody as good as you want to make them. That doesn't mean they're going to stay, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
It's got to be a two-way street. There's got to be something worth staying for, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I've had a couple good people leave the last year and a half that essentially came in with no experience.
Mm-hmm.
That by the time they had left, they were really, really starting to kind of get into that 60-70% range.
Yeah.
And, but, you know, nothing but positivity when they left and nothing but good things to say about both the company and myself. So,
Yeah,
I,
and that's the way to do it, right? You don't ever burn a bridge either going on or coming off.
and
I
especially being young, the two that we lost were, you know, 20, 21 years old. And like you said earlier, like for me to now be like a supervisor or boss is like, hopefully I leave an impression that like, hey, I was their first supervisor. So,
mm-hmm.
you know, that'll go a long way with them. And it sits good with me knowing, you know, that I'm respected as much as I'm respected by them when they leave, right?
Well, it's a part of their growth, right? You're a piece of that. We talked about having a bad boss, but I remember all my good bosses for sure. And I remember the good people I worked with that took me under their wing and helped me. I'll never forget them. They gave me the inspiration to be better. And lots of times when I was lacking confidence, that confidence that I needed came from them. They were like, "Oh, you can do this. Get in there. You're fine." And it's like, "Yeah, okay. You know, if they believe in me, they're probably right. They're not going to throw me somewhere to fail because that's not good for anybody." So, you know, it should work out. Now, I never disrespect anyone for bouncing from a job. I do have some lines though. I feel like if you're going to take on a new job and you're willing to get hired by a company and you went through the process, I feel like you owe them a year. I feel like at least a year. 2 to 3 is kind of my window for like feeling it out. Like if you don't like your job right away, like you just don't like it, leave immediately. Like don't waste your time. Just get out being like, sorry, it's not for me. I want to do something else. Bounce. No hard feelings. If once you stay a year, I feel like it's worth sticking it out for the skills. It takes about 2 to 3 years to pick up the skills from any shop. And if you're going to bounce, fine bounce, but soak up as much of the skills as you can before you bounce so that you are at least more useful to your next employer, right? I don't ever diss anyone on that because I've bounced lots. I usually would do about 5 to 7 years at any given job. But now that I'm coming up on 50, that's quite a few jobs now in my life, right? Like, so they start to stack up. But all of them was like you said, you don't want to burn the bridges. You want to be good on the way out and definitely take something with you. So even when you're talking to young people, they're like, oh, where did you go? You know, how do I get a job? I want to work where you work. It's like, well, number one, you're not going to be able to work where I work because you're not there yet. But I started in these fields. Go try there, right? Because you can still help them. Like even if you leave the shipyards 20 years from now, you can still tell people like, hey, the shipyards are a great place to start. You'll learn these skills. You'll still be able to be an advocate for the industry even without being in it, right?
Yeah, definitely. And like, yeah, I would say my biggest, when I look back on my whole career development was starting at National Steel Car was huge for me because it was just 8 to 9 hours a day, helmet down, running flux, right? So by the time I'd come here, I had 2.5, 3 years with production welding with flux core that wasn't really a skill that I had to hone in when I came here. It was just learning how to adapt to this environment, right? Which didn't take long at all, really.
No, flux core is a very forgiving wire.
Very forgiving. Yeah. I think people think it's harder than it is. It's probably the easiest process there is.
Well, it's just the root. A lot of people fail the root because they try to lay it in too heavy. Just small beads, guys. Don't go. You don't need to lay a 1/2-inch bead in one shot. Let me tell you this right now. You don't. It can, but you don't have to. So now, what do you see for yourself going forward? You're still young as man, 28 years old. You know, like you got a pretty good job here with the company. You know, what's next on your list? What kind of training are you looking to do? What kind of things are you trying to get to?
So January, I'm going to go do my level 1. I've kind of taken a side to that. I really enjoy the quality side of things. So I think January there's a hybrid course coming up. I'm going to go do my level 1
for inspection. Yeah, good
for inspection, and then it's 2-year wait. Then you can do your level 2 and then level 3. So I definitely want to go down that avenue. I don't really see myself doing anything other than ship repair. and shipbuilding.
Kind
So
of love it now.
yeah, I love it. I'm 20. Well, yeah, it's been 7 years now, right? So my whole like youth, adulthood, whatever you want to call it's been this. I could restart, but I can't see myself. I can't.
Yeah.
I like it too much. I like the people. I like the environment.
If you like
it's
it,
definitely
stay,
changing,
man.
right?
Yeah. If you like it, stay. Right. That's the that's the other side of the unicorn, right? Is like the unicorn job.
Yeah, I left. What was it? It would have been 5 years, 6 years ago now. I left. I think I was gone for 2.5 weeks. I hated it. I went to some shop inside, and I was like, "Yo, this sucks. I don't like the environment. I don't like the pace. I don't like anything about this." Right? Like, I ended up coming back.
I did that. Although my stint was about a year and a half, but I went into like fine metal construction. So we're talking like medicine counters, pharmaceutical equipment, process piping. I hated it. Coming from the mining industry where everything I was working on was huge and these giant multi-ton projects and massive equipment and 100-ton cranes and stuff like that, to be in an environment where I'm working with 22 gauge stainless, and I got to form
completely
it.
different.
Oh, I thought I'd love it because it would be new, but I just realized that I just don't really like working on thin materials. I want to do the big stuff.
For me, it was the fitting right away because after about 2.5 years here, when I started, I had really, like you said earlier, I kind of felt like I don't think there was any better I could have gotten with the welding. I had figured it out to the point where I don't think I was ever going to get any better with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I started taking on like the fitting, like cutting, washing, putting big side shell inserts, and just the rush from it, ripping a chain fall and firing a plate in. It was like, man, there's nothing like it, right? So when I lost that, it was like, oh, dude, like I realized like why I was there and like what it would the dopamine, I guess you can call it, right? It's it's too much fun once you get comfortable with it and you get proficient with it, man. It's just you don't want to do anything else.
Man, being a good problem solver on site is like Superman status, right? Like it feels so good when you come up to something and you're like, what kind of a dog's breakfast we got going on here, right? And 8 hours later, you've hammered and cut and tacked and welded this thing into place, and it looks like it was brand new. And you're like,
you take a lot of pride in it.
That feels good, especially when you know that, your boss thought it was going to take, 2 days, and you got it done in 8 hours because you had a couple tricks. If we just put an ear here or an eyelet here, and when you get a come along, we'll slam it in, and you know.
Yeah, it's good. It's fun, and it's a lot of it's same, but it's always different, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, with the inspection, do you think your role at the company would change? Are you looking to get more into a QC role with the company?
I would.
Or just add it to kind of like your list of
kind of add it to the resume, just have it, right? Kind of understand it more, right? Not to say maybe further down the road, but I think right now we're with where I'm at and leading people and building relationships. I'm quite content with the role I'm in right now.
Mm-hmm. And what about travel? Like shipyards. Have you ever thought about like, oh, I could go work in Singapore or something like that? Because I do know buddies that have done that, right?
I'd have to get my passport first.
You can't even cross the border.
No. I think I've been to Florida once.
So you're happy where you are there in Southern Ontario?
Yeah, as long as the work keeps coming in, then I think I'll stay here for now.
Well, from what I see, the maritime industry for Canada is on an upswing. I attend the Maritech conference almost every year and go kind of see what all the shipyards are doing around Canada and the world. And, in the world, there's massive ones. Like the ones in Canada are babies compared to other countries. But,
oh, yeah, you can't even compare.
No, you can't even compare. But we do solid work and they're busy. And we do a lot of niche stuff. Like we do a lot of maintenance that a lot of countries don't bother with. They just want to build new and get them out of there. So, that maintenance angle, which I learned in the mines, you can build a whole career just off maintenance because it's needed forever, right? So,
yeah, it's almost like being honestly, it's almost like being a mechanic, really, because they're always going to need work done, and they're always ran hard, and put away wet.
Well, they do treat those boats pretty rough, man. Like, it's like, oh, maybe we should go around this thing. No, they're gonna go through it. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, we'll let them find the problems.
And what about the support in your local industry? Like, is Ontario Shipyards, do you guys do open houses? Do you guys do, like you said, you ran some programs for hiring? What's the kind of stuff that Ontario Shipyards is doing to kind of stay like active in their community?
Definitely big with Mohawk right now, as far as running programs. I know they've invested some in there's like a shipbuilding training course at Mohawk where they touch on it and they kind of go through all the aspects of it. I forget how long that's for theory, and then they come in to the yard for practical.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, we've done 3 rounds of that now, which has definitely been a huge help. There's I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but there's a program actually tomorrow and Wednesday in both Hamilton and Port Weller where there's about 40 people in total coming in to do some welding, walk around, see the mechanical side of things, the millwright side of things, and whatnot. So, yeah, I guess you could call it an open house, really getting eyes on it, right? Because it's not like a lot of other trades where, like construction, for example, you drive down the road, you see somebody building a house or you see them building a building, right? You don't just get to really drive in here and see what's going on, right?
Yeah, and most of the stuff's kind of like confidential or secret too. There's a lot that you can't show the public.
No, yeah, it's not, you can't just be walking around filming and then showing all your buddies and everything, right? So,
I know I did a tour at C-SPAN and I was like wanting to take pictures and they're like, no, not that, no, not that, no, not that. I'm like, but that's all the coolest stuff. Like,
I've had a couple buddies in here throughout the years where you're hanging out on the weekends or you're hanging out after work and you're talking about what you're doing, and then like other welders, like my friends, and then you get them in here and within the first week you're like, oh man, like, oh, this is actually what you do, this is crazy, like it's different, right? Like,
you actually were courageous enough to hire friends, man. I've only ever hired a couple of my friends.
Yeah, I'll never do it again.
Yeah, I had to fire them right away. It was no good. They were like, way too slow. You guys are too slow. Get out of here.
Yeah, no, it puts a wedge in relationships, that's for sure. But
yeah, I always tell people to don't hire your friends. It's always a bad idea.
Biggest takeaway from today.
And for my friends that are listening, you know what you did.
You know who you are.
Yeah, you know who you are. Wasn't my fault. All right. It's like I tried to prepare you. You weren't ready. Well, this has been an awesome interview. What if for as a wrap up, or a couple questions for a wrap up, for yourself who kind of just came into this and kind of worked your way into this job, for the people that are younger or looking to transition careers and they're thinking about shipyards or really know nothing about shipyards, but let me tell you, they're hiring like crazy across Canada for shipyards. What are some of the skills that they should start working on now if they're thinking about getting into a shipyard? How do they start creeping up on that 10% that you're looking for to hire? What are those skills?
Being a sponge, honestly, observing, listening, taking everything in. It's kind of a hard one to answer. I think if there's people out there that do want to get into this industry at a young age, I would say come apply and start out as a labor welder helper and ask lots of questions, take everything in, and start from the bottom and work your way up, because there's a lot of people here that'll help you get to that 10% that we need you to be at. You just need to be open to wanting to get yourself there.
And what about someone experienced? Let's say, and you gave me this example earlier, someone that's tough to work with. And I totally understand what you mean. Like that welder that was perhaps a steam fitter for 15 years. And then they come and they apply for a job. So they're very, very good at welding steam piping, right? And that's kind of been their gig for 10 years. And they get hired at Ontario Shipyards. They come onto your crew. And that's not really the skill you need, right? You need some different skills out of them. What are some of those skills that you think that should be just a standard? Like You got to know how to do all position flux core. You said there's some stick that's involved, fabrication. Like, what are some of these more like tactile skills I would say, like, put these on your list? Or if you don't know these and you're coming to apply, you need to understand that you need to learn them.
Yeah, a lot of cutting and washing, air gouging, all position welding, and I think the key word would be not all position, but out of position. Right? We're not
uncomfortable welding.
Yeah, we're not standing on our feet all the time, right? So, and just being open to change, right? Taking what you already know, because you never want to take away from anyone. There's people out there with a lot more experience than I have, right?
Right.
Just taking everything you know and realizing that it's a new environment and learning how to apply your skills to this environment to be the best you can be.
And what about the future of shipyards? You know, in your experience now, been there for, you know, almost, 7 years? You said you've been there almost now?
Yeah, 7 going on 8 years.
Yeah. You know, how does the future look for anyone coming into you said that you've gotten better with layoffs. Is it pretty steady work going forward? You recommend people coming to apply?
It's super steady at this point. I would definitely, if it's a trade you want to get into and an industry you want to get into, I think now is the time with how much it's even going to grow over the next say 2-3 years, right? It's we're still a fairly tight knit small workforce, but in 2 or 3 years we could double or triple. So I would say now is the time to get your foot in the door and seeing if it's for yourself.
Well, post-COVID, we're learning lots about that. I was just in Toronto last week and talking to some of the guys in the nuclear and power generation industries, and they got contracts for work that go out to 2036. Like, I mean, we're talking over 10 years of work already signed on the dotted line, and some like $20 billion a year investment over the next 12 years, $260 billion. It's something crazy. Right now, for all these young welders, young tradespeople coming up, keep your ears open, hone those skills, because we got lots of work coming for you. We need you. So, you know, you come into these shops, realize that you're going to have to do time, realize that there's going to be shift work, realize that there's going to be long evenings and long mornings. This is life. This is the work. But also know that it's going to be there for you on the reverse. It's going to pay for your houses. It's going to pay for your life and your family, give you that security and the benefits that you need. So this is something we were talking about in Toronto, how much welding could be such a useful tool in the GTA when things are so expensive. This is one of the only jobs that'll actually pay you enough.
Yeah, it is.
To have a life, you know.
It is. And I think I like to think that we're coming up on the verge of another like a boom for my generation, right? I think I had just missed that window for out west and everything like that. I think hopefully and by this time next year we're talking about another boom, right? And there's an opportunity to hop on something like that, right?
Well, if you can ride a boom, do it, man. Like I live out west. I've been a part of a few booms now, and don't take it for granted. If you know, right? If the boom's coming, ride it, get on it, milk it for all it's worth, because they don't last forever.
No, they don't. And be smart about it, right? Learn how to save money during it, and don't burn any bridges along the way, right?
Right. And Saskatchewan, not just, I mean, Canada has had booms all across the country at different times, right? Like the automotive boom put a lot of people in Ontario into nice houses and set them up for life, and then it died. That's the nature. That's also important for tradespeople to know that booms are generally 8 to 10 years maximum. So don't get in a boom, be the unicorn, and think this is the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Got to be smart. Got to have a backup plan, you know, like.
Don't let the lifestyle get carried away, right? Because you'll have nothing at the end.
We saw that so much here in the Saskatchewan. And, hey, all you young tradespeople, you know, I understand partying's fun. I get it. It's nice to have a pocket full of cash with your buddies. I get it. I've done it. But don't get into yourself in debt. Don't get, like, I mean, I had so many friends during the last boom buy a huge house and a big truck, and plus they're partying $1,000 a week at the casino. And yeah, they were able to do that for a few years, but then the boom is over.
Yeah, it dries up and you got nothing to fall back on.
Well, and it's not like we don't, because we're still welders. So we just go back to being normal. So instead of making $80 an hour, we go back to making $50 an hour. Well, for most of the population, that's not such a wah story. Like, you're still making good money. But for the people that are used to spending $80 an hour,
yeah, it's a whole different,
it's a whole different thing.
Lifestyle.
That's
again,
right. You're selling trucks now. You're selling the boat. You might be getting rid of the cabin. Hopefully you don't ruin your family life. Like, I mean, be smart, play the long game. There's a long time before retirement, so do what you can.
Definitely.
All right, man. Well, this has been an awesome interview. Anything you'd like to say to anybody or any shout outs before we go?
No, I think that wraps it up for me, other than if there is anybody out there who's young and eager, yeah, send over a resume and let's come get your foot in the door.
Awesome, man. Ambition is everything. You can't train ambition. So like you said earlier, if you're hungry, let that hunger lead you, because it'll keep you moving forward. That's the one thing we look forward, all us hirers, leaders. Skills, I can train you. I can train you in a lot of things, but ambition, I cannot. So, like Justin said, if you're eager and you want to really keep moving forward, which also means sacrificing things on your end, then, look into the shipyards, look into at Ontario Shipyards here. Because I know they're hiring. I think one of our CSRs, Matthew Keep, he's always down there doing stuff with you guys.
Matthew well.
Yeah, and he's always telling us about all the great stuff you're doing. So I know that it's happening. So yeah, Google them, find out. I don't know, do you know the website?
Yeah, it should be OntarioShipyards.com.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. So easy. They post their jobs on there. Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Anything else? Any last words of wisdom for the population?
No, I think I'll leave it at that. This was good. I was nervous coming into it, but that was fun.
Well, just a couple of welders talking. It's not hard. So
yeah, no.
Awesome. Well, for everybody that's been downloading and watching and following the podcast, thank you so much. We're well over 50,000 downloads now. We've recorded past our 200th episode, so make sure you check those specials. We got the Fab Tech shows rolling out now. We're going hard. We're looking at we're going to be in Nashville recording in the next week here, so those will be coming out probably in the new year. We've got lots of good interviews coming from there, and we're just trying to do what's best for the industry, support the industry, and make sure we keep this industry that has made us be successful strong for all of you. So keep downloading, sharing, and commenting, and also send in fan mail. We love it. Any DMs, we love it. We love to answer it all. So take care, and I'll catch you at the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed the show.